despite the fact that the timing of this election and the campaign was in Rishi Sunak's gift, he is undeniably the underdog and was the underdog going in tonight. He had a lot more to prove than Keir Starmer, and also actually a lot less areas that he can go on. He's defending a 14-year record that we know most of the public don't feel very good about, and he's limited in his manoeuvre, partly given the polls and what you were just saying about areas they do or don't trust them on. You know, by the looks of things, the Conservative thinks they have certain weaknesses in Labour's brand and in Keir Starmer's brand they can go after.
You both did snap polls on the debate last night with different results. Is that right? So what's
gone? That is right.
Explain yourselves, Scarlett.
Well, we found that Keir Starmer won the debate in the eyes of the people who were watching it. We did find that Rishi Sunak performed better amongst Conservative 2019 voters. Now, he'd certainly hope that would be the case. I would say I'd probably still not good enough amongst Conservative 2019 voters, but broadly speaking, that's what we found.
And what did you find, Patrick?
We found with our snap poll that came in about a couple of hundred seconds after the debate finished that it was very much even Stevens. 51% said that Rishi Sunak won, 49% said that Keir Starmer won. And Keir Starmer won on issues such as the cost of living, the NHS, education. But Rishi Sunak won on stuff like tax and immigration. So broadly down the lines of the issues you think would probably be most comfortable for both parties, that seemed to be reflected in the results.
Just explain to us how you do those polls. And like you said, Patrick, you were getting those results immediately. Is there a slight sense that actually if you make a snap judgment the moment it finishes or not, I've just watched this thing, actually I think Rishi Sunak has done better. And then if you wait half an hour, people slip back into their, oh, actually I can't stand Rishi Sunak. Of course, Keir Starmer won. Does timing make a difference? How do you physically do a poll so quickly, Patrick?
That's a very good hypothesis, I think. The way that we do it at YouGov is that we prepare a representative panel of debate watchers by sort of starting the process days and days in advance and checking in with them, making sure they're ready, getting them ready to answer the poll as soon as the debate closes. And our panelists are fantastic panelists that we are privileged to have here at YouGov. They respond rapidly and they go through the survey within a couple of minutes, and we were able to process the results with a super duper team here at YouGov Towers, who then fed it straight through to me live in the spin room in Salford last night. It was quite an operation, I've got to say, and an incredible turnaround really, and it's a testament to the power of online panels, I think, and the research capabilities that we have here. It's brilliant.
And how did yours work, Scarlett?
Yeah, so we did not work to quite as quick a turnaround. We got people after they had finished watching the debate and collected that data over the next few hours. But we also did a few other things as well. So we brought back the worm. I don't know if you remember it.
Tell us about the worm.
So the worm is you get people to say how positively or negatively they are feeling as they are watching a clip, and you can track those lines. I guess they look a bit like a worm. And so you can do that for all voters, and you can have separate lines for Labour and Conservative voters. And it's obviously a bit of fun, but it's quite insightful too. And it's quite interesting as well, because there are certain lines, I think, that we might be bored of hearing of, or maybe I certainly am. For instance, the sort of Keir Starmer being a son of a toolmaker. I can't think how many times I've heard that, but actually the public really like it. So obviously that partly explains why it's in the script so much to start with, but also probably a good reminder as well that actually for, the public, quite a lot of the time, this might be the first time they're hearing these now sort of quite well-worn lines.
Yeah, the news we got earlier on that just over 5.5 million people watched it on ITV last night. A lot of those people probably haven't sat down and watched a whole episode of PMQs or, Laura Koonsberg on a Sunday morning, or listened to, I don't know, me interviewing Keir Starmer, whatever it might be. And so they're discovering those things fresh, Patrick. And actually, it was interesting watching both what they said and what they didn't say. I think Matthew Parris pointed out at the Times today. Rishi Sunak didn't mention Jeremy Corbyn once. We've just heard that Jeremy Corbyn's just been cheered to the rafters. He handed in his nomination papers to make sure he's on the ballot paper in Islington North. No end of Rishi Sunak and Tories mentioning Jeremy Corbyn, and Keir Starmer served Jeremy Corbyn. He wasn't mentioned at all last night. So the decision about what to not mention is almost as significant as what they do.
Absolutely, and parties will, and we know for a fact that they do sort of message testing, and they test lines, they test ideas, and they also test counter narratives as well to see, if we say this and then the opposition says that, how does that land with the public? And I think the Corbyn line, Labour have a very good defence to that now, because as you quite rightly mentioned, Jeremy Corbyn has just handed in his papers to stand against Labour in the next general election. So I think as a line, it's kind of lost its potency now that Labour are actually fighting against Jeremy Corbyn. So that's probably a major part of the decision. And they will have gone hard on tax, because probably a lot of polling focus groups would have told them that those lines land quite well. And indeed, if we look at what the conversations are about today, it's not about what Keir Starmer was saying about NHS or education or cost of living. Everyone seems to be talking about, at least for now, that 2,000 tax figure. So that's the thing that seems to have come through from last night, and that's the thing that everyone's talking about, be it in a positive or negative way. And we'll see how it lands, whether it's a association that's built with Labour, or whether the combat with the Treasury is the narrative which seeps through with that. But it's interesting that that seems to be the thing right now that's dominating the post-debate conversation.
And is it the Scarlett, your reading of it, that based on the polling and strengths and weaknesses, the NHS, the Labour Party always poll better on the NHS. Defence and security, normally the Conservatives do better. We heard quite a lot of that from Rishi Sunak a couple of weeks ago before he called the election. But throwing down the tax question, this £2,000 tax question, which has been rubbished by lots of people, and now there's a row about the civil service and so on. But Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives deciding that's a Labour weakness that they'll try to exploit to damage the Labour reputation tells you something about where they think a weakness is.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And it's interesting to think about, isn't it? Because despite the fact that the timing of this election and the campaign was in Rishi Sunak's gift, he is undeniably the underdog, and was the underdog going in tonight. He had a lot more to prove than Keir Starmer, and also actually a lot less areas that he can go on. He's defending a 14-year record that we know most of the public don't feel very good about, and he's limited in his manoeuvre, partly given the polls and what you were just saying about areas they do or don't trust them on. By the looks of things, the Conservative thinks they have certain weaknesses in Labour's brand and in Keir Starmer's brand they can go after. For Labour's brand, that's things like the economy and taxation. And for Keir Starmer's brand, it's this idea that they think they're onto something when they say, well, you can't trust what he says. And so I think the going after the tax was a way of working both those in together. It's sort of saying, well, Labour always want to raise your taxes. That's what they're about. Combined with, well, Keir Starmer's not telling you this right now, but this is what he's going to do, and trying to play up that idea. I think the problem is that voters, yes, they might have some of those concerns about Keir Starmer. They might have some of those concerns about the Labour Party, but at the moment, their concerns about Rishi and the Conservatives far outweigh that. And I don't think last night would have done much to change that.
So that is the million-dollar question, I suppose. We've had the YouGov MRP poll, the big mega seat-by-seat poll, beginning of the week. We've had others, more polls from jail partners. There was a Ovation one as well. They are catastrophically bad for the Conservatives when you're talking about them being down to the tens of seats. Is it possible, do you think, Patrick, that a debate like that, and you throw into that also Nigel Farage throwing his hat into the ring, will we see movement in the polls that actually, bluntly, we haven't seen for the last 18 months?
Yeah, quite. We haven't really, have we? I think that certainly the Farage impact will be felt in the polling. I think we probably were very likely to see Reform UK get a boost from that. It could very well be that in the next MRP projections as well that we notice they may be picking up 2 seats perhaps. We'll have to wait and see, but I do think that there will be an impact there, and it will be disproportionately affecting the Conservative vote, because the kind of voters who will back Reform UK and certainly will go under a Farage Reform UK are in the Conservative column right now, or perhaps in the don't know column. So it's going to hurt the Conservatives far more than Labour. As for whether the debate will make a difference or matter, I think what the important thing to note about debates is, of course, a few million people is quite a lot, but that's still only a fraction of the likely voters who will go out on the polling day on July 4th. It's more about what kind of stories come across in the following days. What are the things that go into the news cycle? How are they landed? How are they received? What's the narrative that's formed around them? Which I think is why the Conservatives will probably, at the minute at least, be quite pleased that it's this £2,000 sort of, let's call it, tax bombshell that's dominating the discourse. So it's not so much about what happened in the tit for tat of the event itself last night, but what are the stories that come through, and how does that affect people's perceptions of Starmer and Sunak as potential prime ministers? What might stick to the party brands, and then we might see some movement in the polls. So let's wait and see. Potentially there could be some good news for the Conservatives, but that might well just be completely cancelled out by the Farage effect.